The Indians would say, in the middle of the night, the Wendigo ate Geronimo. Oh, well, it's just another excuse for their hunger.
Tell that to Dave!
We are talking Frostbiter, Wrath of the Wendigo from 1995, directed and co-written by Tom Chaney. And this was put out by Troma, of course, the makers of Toxic Avengers, among other movies. And this was a crazy kind of Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 homage movie about a killer Wendigo. Interestingly, if you have seen the more recent movie, The Ritual, it actually has a similar looking creature to this one. I'm not saying it was an influence, but who knows. So, Frostbiter, as it's commonly known, as I say, a low budget movie, clearly influenced by the Evil Dead 1 and 2. There's even a poster of Evil Dead 2 in this cabin in the woods, so you can kind of see the reference. But it really is. I mean, it really does have wear that kind of influence on its sleeve. The story is that there's been this kind of evil Wendigo which has been banished for many years by this kind of guardian. And how the guardian kind of keeps it at bay, it has this kind of setup with all this kind of like a gate. And two hunters basically destroy the gate by accident, unleashing the Wendigo, and this kind of guardian is killed. So he has to kind of summon forth a new guardian in the form of this woman. So this Wendigo is now wreaking havoc on this isolated island somewhere, and anyone who's trapped on the island at the time is under threat from this Wendigo until this kind of potential chosen one comes to arrive and save everyone. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So it is worth pointing out is this movie is a horror comedy. It is quite wacky, almost spoof-like, as some of the Troma movies tend to be. And this is definitely one of them. But it does try and have a kind of a gory, sort of somewhat kind of similar movie in regards to narrative as to Evil Dead, with kind of like various undead creatures attacking our protagonists until we get to the kind of the Wendigo at the end. What can we say that works in this movie's favour? I mean, this is sort of a movie, if you are a fan of the Troma movies and you haven't seen this one, it is probably worth checking out, because it is one of the kind of the more, maybe not completely out there movies that they do, but it's kind of going on that scale. So lots of kind of like wacky, funny ideas here. Some of which are more jokey, some of which are kind of a little bit more just over the top sort of fantasy, like they have these matte paintings and the kind of like this mountain is in the shape of a skull and things like that. So, but then we have the kind of like the sillier ideas, and there's also lots of kind of like over the top, but very low budget special effects that we see this kind of small private plane as it kind of comes into the island and is attacked by some type of a flying creature, and it's a very rudimentary kind of model attacking this kind of model plane. It's kind of quite funny in a way at the kind of the level of kind of hokiness, but I think you can enjoy it if you are a fan of low budget movies, and you obviously are. You know, it's not meant to be taken seriously. It's not meant to be a movie where you're gonna be expecting high production values, but it's very much kind of like an ambitious movie for the clearly low budget that it had, and very kind of just wants to throw everything at it. And if you're a fan of the Evil Dead movies, then you'll enjoy all the kind of like the homages and the references that this kind of film has to it, down to kind of like camera stylings, kind of the way characters are, interact and things, and then certain kind of set pieces as well. It's very, very referential to the Evil Dead. I would say probably more so Evil Dead 2, to be honest. I think the Wendigo itself is this large kind of stop motion creature that we kind of see briefly at the beginning, but more so at the end. You know, again, it's a 1995 movie, it's a low budget film, but I still kind of quite liked it. Is it the best stop motion ever? No, it's not, but I still think it's kind of quite a fun design, and it's kind of good enough and kind of still kind of quite fun. And in a way, I kind of prefer this than having, like, a guy in a suit or something like that, or in these days it will be kind of CGI. So I kind of quite enjoyed the kind of like the kind of the ambition of the effects and the kind of the design here, even though if in practice obviously it does look a little bit on the kind of like the sillier side at times. There is kind of quite a lot of kind of gory deaths and things like that, and kind of quite sort of fun characters. There's a kind of hunting lodge, for example, and there's kind of got this group of guys that go there every year, and this new guy turns up, and you know, he's all got the kind of the winter hat and stuff on, and he takes it's off, and he's a black guy, and he's like, all the other guys are like, just don't know what to say and things like that. So, you know, there's a kind of a little bit of like humour which maybe you wouldn't get so much these days in it, which I think is kind of quite funny. It's very kind of like lots going on in this film. This is not a film where you're going to have long, drawn out, you know, areas of dialogue or, you know, self-reflection or mood pieces. You know, every kind of like few minutes there's going to be something crazy kind of happening on screen. And so it is kind of, you know, quite a fun movie in that regard. So yeah, I mean, there's certain elements here that I think, you know, work better than others, shall we say. But nonetheless, it has lots of kind of at least fun ideas, and I think it strikes a reasonable level, I think, of being sort of a spoof movie, but still kind of having a forward momentum in the plot. What doesn't work, I mean, I say it has a forward momentum in the plot, but the plot isn't exactly kind of like a deep one. And if we have to talk about plot issues and kind of like, with knowing that it's obviously a somewhat of a spoofy movie, I will say our main character, which is this chosen one, this woman who sort of turns up, we know nothing about her. I mean, this movie doesn't do any type of work into kind of giving her a character at all. She just kind of turns up. In actual fact, we get more characterization from the kind of like the red shirt kind of like group of hunters, really. So that was a bit of a failing on the movie's part, really. There are certain decisions as the movie kind of goes on where I feel there were choices made that I think could have been better. For example, some of the musical choices are a bit weird. I assume this was done as a kind of a joke, but we have these kind of like almost like pop songs playing in certain scenes, and there's one that sounds like it's kind of like riffing on like a Prince sort of sound, and it's oddly bizarre. A little bit the audio mixing that means the songs play quite loud and they're a bit overbearing, and you know, I think it could have worked on a joke at one time, but I think they do it a little bit too much. And also, obviously, I think, as talking about going back to the humour, again, it's a very sort of silly movie, and humour is a little bit subjective. You know, not everyone's going to find this kind of thing as funny, maybe. Yeah, and so sometimes it comes across as a little bit childish, admittedly. I think, to be honest with you, the lack of any real plot or characters means you feel like you're kind of watching a series of set pieces, like low budget sort of set pieces, more so than a true story. Now, again, I know this is meant to be a hokey spoof style movie, and that's fine. But when you're watching this, if you kind of try to watch it and laugh along with it, but you still want to watch the story, it doesn't really have that much of a story, and you know, there is that. And that, as such, I found some of the, especially in the middle of the movie, some of the attacks, it sort of almost repeats the same beats to a little bit of a degree there. Overall, I think this movie is, you know, a fun to a degree, but is it a good movie? I mean, I gotta say, obviously, if you're putting like the Evil Dead films on at a certain level, and then we have a look at movies that are clearly influenced by it, and there have been some, like Wither, for example, I think is a good Evil Dead sort of like homage. I've got to say this is a slightly below average one, but still has some entertainment value. I'll give it a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.